Harsh, the interview that's really got attention is that of Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. And it's got so much attention that I think people haven't bothered to read the accompanying interview, which is with her brother Rahul Gandhi. Now, put together, what really emerges that is newsworthy at this point is that both brother and sister are on the same page in at least statedly saying they're absolutely okay with a non-Gandhi leading the party. Do these words ring true to you? And I'm going to ask Pradeep the same thing. And I ask you this because Sonia Gandhi has just completed 1 year as interim president. We see no signs, no movements towards a new Congress president. And in fact, there are appeals for Rahul Gandhi to come back and take the job. But in this book, Rahul and Priyanka both clearly say that a non-Gandhi should lead the Congress. So Harsh, speak a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I think the first caveat I'll say is that, of course, these interviews were held late last year. And as they say, a week is a long time in politics. So a year is definitely a very long time in politics. So a lot can change from then. But at the time of our interviews with both Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Ms. Priyanka Gandhi, they were, unequivocal in their statement that they are fine with a non-Gandhi leading the party. And that's why this is, becoming such a newsworthy item. Priyanka Gandhi went to the extent of saying that, whoever it is, if that person tells me to leave Uttar Pradesh and go work in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, I jolly well go and do that. I think they both seem very much on the same page on this. And I think the question of, why that's not resulted in a non-Gandhi actually taking over as president, I think that there could be other factors leading to that, but definitely not the fact that either of the two siblings would be trying to stop that, is my sense.
So that's interesting, Professor Chibber, because in the cynical, hardened world of Delhi media, there's a sense that, that the Gandhis will either come back themselves or they will place someone there who's a placeholder. And I know that in the chapter, that question is asked. That question is asked of both Rahul and Priyanka that, how do we know that even if you place a non-Gandhi there, it won't just be a token representation. What is your impression of this debate based on the two interviews with Rahul and Priyanka? Both of them saying we're absolutely fine. In fact, Priyanka goes so far as to say, I'm in absolute agreement with Rahul, a non-Gandhi should be the Congress president.
I think we've been asked this question a lot, and a number of people want to know this because this is a newsworthy question. It's very difficult for us sitting here, and you know this better than I do. Politicians have self-images of themselves, and politicians like to present an image of themselves, right? And to what extent is this real? I don't know what that means, because that's a very difficult question to answer.
Sure.
So in other words, do Rahul and Priyanka feel this? In the interview, they are clear and unequivocal that this is okay with them. That's the first thing.
Right.
They both seem sincere when they said so. The harder question you're asking is are the Congress party's internal politics and processes ready for a non-Gandhi to be president? And that I'm not in a position to answer because I have not spoken to all the other players. You must keep in mind that on the one hand, we like to think that the Congress party, this is my perception, my view, not from based on any interviews, that the Congress party is just run by one family. But there are also countervailing pressures within the party and the senior leadership.
Yeah.
And so the question we need to be asking ourselves is maybe not what the Gandhis want, but maybe what it is that the leadership that controls the Congress party wants. Right? So I think that may be the more important question.
So that would presuppose, Pradeep Chibber, that there are people outside of the Gandhi family that are just as powerful as them, if not more.
It's not that they're more powerful, but just imagine, you're running an organization. One is you run an organization in which you control everything and you decide everything that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
The other is you're running an organization in which you're the most powerful person. There are lots of people whose points of view you need to take into account. So in other words, if you're going to be running any political party, there are, 10, 15 people around you. You may have the final word, but these are people whose views you need to listen to.
Sure.
And so the question you need to ask yourself is, am I going to ignore them completely? Or is it that there is something in that dynamic? And this is something Rahul said as well to us, which is that there are internal procedures within the Congress. And, we seem to think not from the outside, but a number of people have said to us, they have internal procedures. Those procedures may not be open. They may not be democratic in the sense we like to imagine as open voting, but there are procedures. And, there are people with powerful interests within the party who have an interest, a vested interest in keeping things the way they are, maybe.
But it is obviously of great contemporary interest that both brother and sister made this point about a non-Gandhi Congress president in the book that both of you have written. But there are also there's also another bit that I think journalists haven't got hold of yet. They're going to be the BJP will certainly have a lot to say about it, and that is Rahul Gandhi being asked about his frequent trips abroad by both of you. And he makes the point that he doesn't have any privacy in India. He's surrounded 24/7 by security guards. And he says, when I go abroad, I learn from different cultures. I learn. For me, these are education trips. I do not see my trips abroad as vacations. Harsh, how do you think that's going to go down? I mean, I think the BJP hasn't read your book. Otherwise, it would be all over this by now.
Well, I think the fact that we've tried to cover most major parties and most of the most prominent leaders, I think you'll find a lot of parties will find a lot on other parties and their leaders that they'd love to bring to limelight.
Of course.
But we back in Berkeley, when we interviewed Mr. Rahul Gandhi for the first time in 2017, we talked about him being a reluctant politician, not being a 24/7 politician. And we tried to, pick up from that conversation and ask him again after the 2019 loss that this is the perception of you. And here's tangible evidence. You go on these foreign trips a lot. Why do you do that? And I think it seemed to be a little bit of a sincere answer we got, which is that I have all these different interests. And he talked a lot about his different interests from, World War II history to Buddhism to Pakistani and Chinese history to martial arts and scuba diving. So I think he expressed that this was his way of, one, getting, freedom from the trappings of Lutyens Delhi and the security and the privacy that he lacks over there. And the second piece was more about just exploring these different cultures. Now, the question of whether we should believe that or whether it's good for Indian politics or the Congress party is a different question. But I think just getting that question to him and getting him to answer that was our way of trying to hold him accountable for something on which we now have evidence of. They've shared in Parliament the number of trips he's taken.
Yeah, and what was interesting to me, Pradeep, was that he was not apologetic about it. There's nothing apologetic in Rahul Gandhi's tone on that question. He's not even vaguely defensive about it. He basically dismisses some of the tropes about him as BJP propaganda. And on the trips abroad, he's like, I need this time. This time is for the evolution of me, my mind. And the other thing that comes out is that we all keep seeing him as a part-time politician, but he makes it clear to both of you that he is in public life for the long haul. He's not getting up and going away. In fact, his exact quote to both of you is, I can stand with the Congress party without being its president.
I can stand with the Congress party without being its president, yes.
Yes. So
yes.
What do you make of this? Did it make you re-examine your impression that he might be a reluctant politician? Your conversation with him?
No, I actually think that you're asking there are a number of politicians in the book who we have spoken to, because we have this myth, or we have this idea, and this is what we like to present. This is how it's presented in the media by people that a politician has to be a full-time 365-day, 24/7 politician. Yeah. And it's not only Mr. Rahul Gandhi, but there are other politicians as well who we've interviewed in the book who have slightly different interests. They are people. They're just not, just by saying question is, what do we want from our politicians? Do we want them to think, eat, and, breathe politics all day long? Or do we want them to actually be human beings who have interests other and are fuller individuals? And I think what Rahul Gandhi is expressing to us, at least in my view, is, listen, I have other things I do.
Yeah.
And all of us have other interests. I hope that the only thing one does in one's life is just not one thing, right? And I think he likes to do other things, but we somehow believe that because he's interested in other things, he's, not really serious. Now, that's a tough call.